Hello there, ladies and gentlemen. I welcome all of you back this afternoon to another Christian article. And apparently, one of the many great things that causes stress in Chris's life is things that absolutely have nothing to do with him whatsoever, and things that bring out possibly some of the very worst aspects of Chris's character. In particular, Mert. The P is meant to be silent, but we can all tell this is meant to be, of course, former United States President Donald Trump. So, why does he take such an issue with Donald Trump? Well, let's just get on with it, shall we? Plus, Trump is just too damn rich and immature. And Trump spelled backwards is Mert, which rhymes with hurt, and he would badly Mert this country in office. Chris: no, I don't take responsibility at all. Donald Trump 2020. So, you could argue Chris might have had a point. However, there's being right about something, but then there's displaying it in the way Chris does, which makes it very difficult to take his word as gospel. Not that anyone should, but that's besides the point. Mert is a Cwcism for billionaire and 45th President of the United States, Donald J. Trump, born 14th of June 1946. He initially pronounced it Mert, based on the opinion that the P is silent when his name is spelled backwards. However, in Eid Mert Eid, he pronounced the P. Starting in the latter half of 2016, Chris started to become vocal, well, that's one way of putting about it, about his intense dislike of Mert on Facebook. In spite of how passionate he feels about Mert, Chris's understanding of contemporary US politics, well, contemporary politics in general for that matter, continues to be exceptionally poor. On the 8th of November 2016, Chris participated in the US presidential election and voted for Hillary Clinton. Following news that Trump had won the election, Chris reacted by making multiple death threats against him and Vice President Mike Pence, which is against the law on account of treason and also promoting instigation of violence. I know that there are better ways I could have put that, but the idea still stands. Since encountering the idea, guys, however, Chris has largely lost interest in politics in favor of engaging in his messiah complex, and as such has mostly forgotten about Trump. He never addressed his impeachment, never seems odd considering that it was the closest he came to being removed from office early. Nonetheless, Chris slowly became more interested in the 2020 election in the final weeks before Election Day, particularly after Trump contracted COVID-19. After a drawn-out election in 2020 due to complications with countering a substantial increase in mail votes compared to previous years, it was determined that Trump would lose his re-election bid and would be succeeded by current United States President Joe Biden. Meaning of the name: well, at least my face ain't fucking orange. Chris several separate occasions before 2016. The Cwcism comes from a Facebook comment from the 25th of September, partially quoted above, in which Chris says that Trump spelled backwards is Mert, which rhymes with hurt, and that Trump would badly Mert the US if elected. This is what Chris probably believes. Mert Donald. Okay, I said it. Did it work? No, he's still in this dimension. I think we need to try him rhyming into saying it. No, the posture of this man is just far too good in comparison. Revising Trump's name has twofold meanings. Firstly, names are particularly sacred to Chris. In his eyes, mocking someone's name will severely degrade them. This article will establish that Chris has an enormous disdain for Donald Trump. Secondly, Chris has historically assumed that saying something backwards induces subliminal stimuli, which he believes, he's probably the only one on this, are enormously influential on the psyche and the physical body. Therefore, Chris may believe reversing Trump's name in a negative context might effectively alter his audience's perception of him. Beyond the random access humor, Chris probably thinks his rendition of Trump's name is a serious presidential objection that everyone needs to consider. Chris continued using this backwards name in subsequent Facebook posts and videos. Opposition to Trump. You have got to be kidding. Trump is most immature, uncouth, and not valid to be president. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to point out to each and every one of you right now, ladies and gentlemen, that Chris is also the same woman who went out of her own way to make herself as homophobic and misogynistic as possible. He is in absolutely no way, shape or form to start judging others for being immature, even and including to sitting on a cake and then farting on it for somebody he never met in person. Trump will only make the country go broke, as Groening predicted, and all the money will only go to his debtors and the fat cat rich people, and hardly any of us in the middle class and below. Chris considers himself to be middle class, really? Someone who has to beg for money on Facebook and on YouTube? Not to mention he is anti-LGBTQ, anti-immigrants, he puts down women very bad, and he is an all-round bad person. Hillary will tax the fat cats and fill the middle class and lower, and get the country less in debt. So the country will still be in debt, just slightly less, and she is pro-LGBTQ and immigrants, and she is more beneficial for everyone in general, and this country is long overdue for a woman's touch. Whatever the hell that means. You should watch all 3 debates on YouTube. I'll send you the links in chronological order. You know what, Chris? All I'm going to say right now is that probably back in 1979 in the UK, somebody also said that the UK was in need of a woman's touch as well. And look where that got us. The changed banner on the Quickie front page just after Trump's election. I am Pmurt Donald, America's president and the stinker of the tugboat. I will make America great again and nothing less. Well, at least he's happy about it. Chris has historically never had any real interest in politics, combined with his general indifference towards anything intellectual in favor of nobler pursuits. It's perplexing that Trump's involvement in politics would concern Chris as much as it does. Speculation has suggested a more personal route to Chris's animosity, as Chris's views of politics effectively begin and ends with himself, and nothing for his neighbours or for the common man. The true root of his anger lies somewhere in the bramble bush of his confused psyche. For one thing, Chris is highly impressionable. As discussed later on this page, the LGBT blogs and groups he follows on Facebook have a negative opinion of Trump, as they generally do with most right-wing politicians due to their left-wing biases. Going off of the minimal amount of information he's absorbed from said blogs, Chris has said that he is afraid of what a Trump presidency could mean for him and his lesbian soul. This is in addition to the general trend among popular culture and major media outlets, which has also been severely critical of Trump. Considering how Chris takes things he sees in media at face value without any cause to think for himself or anything different, it makes sense that he would readily and eagerly accept those sentiments without a second thought. Chris has shown that he picks his candidates based on who he can identify with more, on account of his gender confusion and dislike of men. Hillary Clinton was far more attractive to him simply because she was a woman, and literally nothing else. The evidence for this is overwhelming, especially considering that he once compared her with Sarah Palin. This is also consistent with Chris's fondness of George W. Bush and Barack Obama. Just for the record here, which Bush are we talking about? Are we talking about senior or junior? Let me just do a quick check. Oh, it gets a whole article on his own. Oh, okay, we're talking about Walker Bush. Okay, so we're talking about Bush Jr. Okay, makes sense. Both of whom he voted for because he liked them personally. Especially salient to this discussion is the mentality behind Chris's brand loyalty. Once Chris picks a side on something, he will defend that side no matter what due to a misplaced sense of rigid devotion. This time, the side he picked has down and out lost, and Chris has been legally able to vote since February 24th, 2000. He's never mentioned voting for a losing candidate in a presidential election before. It's possible that this explosive anger is based partially in the fact that his favoured candidate didn't come out on top this time. Chris has provided the following reasons for why he dislikes Trump. It's unclear how many of these are his actual opinions and not just things he's parroting from what he's heard on the internet. As the astute of you will quickly notice, many of the negative qualities he accuses Trump of having are ones that he himself possesses. This shouldn't be pretty hard to notice, but let's try anyway. He is very spiteful. Well, yes, Chris is definitely that. He makes numerous death threats towards people for no good reason. He is an immature brat who mocks everyone. Yes, that is also including Chris. He was a one-track tape repeating himself. Yes, he was that as well. On pat deeds that he was proud of. Oh, you mean like honor roll at high school? Completely going off and saying that, you're not gay hundreds of times, Chris. Yeah, he's that as well. He is hot-headed, impulsive, orange-faced. Okay, he's definitely not orange-faced. Well, Chris isn't. Money-grubbing, double-dealing, immigrant and race offensive, and most offensive on the LGBTQ. I haven't seen Chris really being that mad against, immigrants, but he certainly he has prejudices against race. Double dealing is, well, that's more Barbara's thing, and Chris isn't so much like money grubbing, but he's money spending, that he has no concept of the value of it. He puts down women very bad, so does Chris as well. His womanizing and raping actions, also Chris. He is a male, what used to be Chris. In February 2016, Chris said, "I feel like America needs a woman's touch finally after all these years," as a reason for why he wanted Hillary Clinton to become president. On the 20th of November, he stated, "Trump is so many typical offensive male stereotypes. He probably was born with 2 downed Y chromosomes instead of the usual XY pair." I know fine well that's not making fun of people who have Down syndrome, but you have to wonder exactly what people would probably think if Chris was trying to compare Donald Trump to people who have Down syndrome. If I had Down syndrome, I would be very, very pissed off with Chris at that. Because it's just something you don't really do. In fact, it's something you never do. He is not valid to be president. Chris isn't for that either. Interestingly, both Trump and Chris have been accused of sexual harassment. While Trump's allegations have not been proven, Chris has had the claims regarding him confirmed. On the issues, he wants the immigrants to build their own keep out wall so he can kick them all out. He has ideals of cutting finances from all of his more important resources the country needs in communities and feeding the industries from the national debt. And he acted against the immigrants in that topic as well. They have to work too, The irony there is that Chris has worked at most 6 months in the 39 years he's been alive, so only Chris could ever stop mentioning work until he's actually, toiled in his life. He will only make the country go broke, as Groening predicted, and all the money will go to his own debtors and the fat cat rich people, and hardly any of us in the middle class and below. And Hillary will Hillary will tax the fat cats and fill the middle class and get the country less in debt. Like I said about money, Chris about reality, thinking that episode of The Simpsons where Donald Trump was revealed to be president, it's just Chris thinks. I don't even think Chris is really just saying that to be funny. I think he's just saying that as a very valid response as to why you shouldn't vote for Donald Trump. On issues relevant to Chris. LGBTQ. Chris is especially paranoid in his belief that Trump and Pence hate the LGBTQ community. Chris has said he does not just despise Trump and Pence, but as a lesbian, circa trans woman, and high-functioning autistic person, I fear too. What would happen with those two goddamn jerks in the White House? In addition, he said, I fear the loss of my own rights alongside our other LGBTQ community peoples as well. Bear in mind, many people in the LGBTQ community don't really want to have much to do with Chris at all, given his reputation. However, he has been vague in explaining why any policies they might implement would affect him. Chris does not face discrimination in the workforce or in society, at least not from being transgender, almost 4 years into their term. Trump and Pence have yet to criminalize the LGBT community and or allow widespread discrimination of them. Sure, the Republican Party is mostly anti-LGBT, but they know that doing such a stunt would be politically suicidal. The LGBT rights were admittedly a thorny issue going into the 2016 election, likely due to same-sex marriage, only having been legalized throughout the country via a Supreme Court ruling the previous year. However, the president cannot unliterally override a Supreme Court decision, and even the more conservative justices appointed by Trump during the term are highly unlikely to strike down the earlier ruling, as the court historically has refrained from making decisions which deprive large groups of individuals of their rights, whether they be American citizens or otherwise, due to such decisions related to African Americans and slavery, in the early to mid-19th century being seen as a major cause of the American Civil War. Although he's released conflicting statements on the matter, Trump has expressed some progressive ideas regarding transgender issues. Chris is aware of all this, but still refuses to give Trump any credit whatsoever, saying he is most offensive to us in the LGBTQ communities, regardless of his transgender bathroom choice statement. In any case, the only anti-LGBT thing Trump has done as president is barring transgender people from the military. It's not like LGBT people would simply poof out of the moment Trump was inaugurated, as Chris assumed. Chris also criticized Pence, saying that Pence is just as much anti-LGBTQ and everything else that Trump is. So my feelings are the same with that rat bastard as much very well. His criticism of Pence, however, is a little more understandable, since has indeed prompted the anti-LGBT policies and is firmly against same-sex marriage, like any average Republican. The tugboat. Trump has been critical of welfare in the past and throughout his campaign. Should he find Congress agreeable, one of his aims may be to pass legislation limiting welfare's funding and availability. Chris is dimly cognizant of this and fears that he may end up finding his tugboat reduced or even completely taken away from him. As of 2020, however, neither Trump nor Congress have passed any legislation in the matter, and the chance of that happening is very unlikely, considering Congress is currently party-controlled by Trump's opposition. Chris continues to receive the tugboat without any problems. On the 14th of November, Chris stated, "They would drain money from SSI, making my mother and I close to broke." In truth, what makes Chris and Bob closer to broke is themselves. Given the rapid decline in their finances, he was hoping Hillary Clinton's policies would increase his tugboat revenue, if not bail the Chandlers out entirely. It should be worth bearing in mind that I don't know if it's either at this point, but Chris is currently close to $1/8 in debt. Chris has admittedly refused to budge on his anti-Trump positions. On the 20th of November, after radio silence following Lizzie the Leslie readers and his Facebook friends criticizing him for his repeated death wishes, he said, "There is nothing nor any amount of time or whatever else that would make it the cold day in the earth's core to make me have even a remote inkling of a mystery wrapped in a riddle inside an enigma of any change of feeling of heart of mine about Trump ever." Jesus Christ, that was a mouthful. Right, where were we? Chris's news sources. On Facebook, Chris routinely browses pages on LGBTQ culture, such as Lizzie the Leslie in the wake of the 2016 election. Many of those pages became inundated with articles written with a clear anti-Trump angle. It's not particularly hard to do, but I can see the point. Chris forms and reinforces his opinions on Trump based on those articles, rating many of them angry examples of the pages Chris reacted to when he can be seen both here and here. So we'll do the first one. LGBTQ Nation. Okay, Christine of Lizzie, and okay, that's the first one. Now here is the second one. Here it is. Wow, that's really small. Clean. Well, let's just go through each of these. Lizzie, fuck Jerry, Christine Weston Chandler, herself, Christine on what's this? Lizzie again. Okay, right, that makes sense. It's likely that Chris simply skims headlines or opening paragraphs without taking the time to read the articles. The second example was taken 1 hour after Chris posted to a Lizzie the Leslie comment section. Given that he is also busy with responding to its readers, it is impossible for him to have thoroughly read the articles. That Chris can't be bothered to learn about more is the issues he apparently feels so seized with emotion over is emblematic of his arrogance, stupidity, and laziness. Chris refuses to even try to understand the issues at hand, and so his understanding of Trump and American politics is consequently abysmal. Even of the things he's supposed to be interested in. Alec Benson Leary continues to prove the theory that Chris really does not put effort into anything he's ever tried. Chris has also cited an episode of The Simpsons as one of his major sources for being anti-Trump, which is appropriate considering one of the ways he wastes his time in lieu of acting like a functional adult. Anti-Trump petitions. Chris has signed several online petitions in an effort to prevent Trump from assuming the presidency. A petition opposing the anti-LGBTQ Russell Amendment. On January 20th, Donald Trump and Mike Pence are going to enter the White House. They campaigned on a platform of hatred, bigotry, racism, misogyny, and xenophobia. The Russell Amendment would reverse existing non-discrimination projections for 28 million people in the federal contracting workforce. That means employers could fire someone who refused to give them a job because they have a same-sex partner, use birth control or are a single mother, are transgender, or even simply don't practice the same religion as their employer. Of course, Chris supported this petition, probably because it disparages Trump and references the transgender community. It's unlikely he actually read or understood its contents. A petition calling on the Electoral College to disregard the election and install Hillary Clinton into the presidency. This is something that literally never would have happened, but Chris had also cited this petition in the hopes that on the 19th of December 2016, the Electoral College would ignore the results of the 2016 presidential election since Clinton won the popular vote. This did not happen. Death threats. Chris's hatred of Trump is so great that he made 4 videos of himself role-playing acts of violence on him with Transformers, My Little Pony, and Lego toys, with 2 of those occurring before the election, including one where he destroyed a Transformers toy, further showing his lack of financial sense. Timeline. On the 9th of November 2016, Chris began making several enraged death threats against then-President-elect. He continued his tirade in the following days, adding Vice President Mike Pence to his death threats on the 10th of November, in spite of the possibility that it could land him in very serious legal trouble, on the grounds of treason and instilling death threats, and possibly hate speech as well. According to United States Code, a threat against the president is punishable by a fine and/or a maximum of 5 years in prison. Chris has gotten himself into legal trouble multiple times in the past, to the point that he has 6 misdemeanors on his record, with 4 of those stemming from assault crimes. He is also having financial trouble. Despite Chris's repeated calls from Trump and Pence to die, they made it unscathed through their 4-year terms. Given that Chris's address is public knowledge, the possibility of the Secret Service visiting and interrogating him for threats and then forcing him to not divulge anything should not be ruled out. To that I have to say, if they haven't done anything about this before, why on earth are they going to do about it now that Trump is out of office? 2016, November 9th, 3:28 a.m. Chris posts on Facebook, probably when he should be asleep, that he wants someone to assassinate Trump with a sniper rifle. Chris's Twitter account automatically tweets the post. Throughout the day, many high-profile Twitter users retweet the post. Several Twitter users say that they reported him to the FBI and the Secret Service. 3:39 a.m. Chris uploads a YouTube video depicting him smashing a Transformers toy in effigy of Trump while screaming, "Die." 3:40 a.m. Chris posts on Facebook again. He links to the YouTube video and says Trump should die now, before taking office. The post is also tweeted by his Twitter account. 5:15 a.m. The sniper rifle death threat disappears from Facebook. 8:30 a.m. An Infowars.com article, this is one run by Alex Jones, featuring Chris's death threat in tweet form is published. 11 p.m. The same threat disappears from Twitter. We don't know whether or not this was forced by administrators or whether or not Chris somehow did it himself. And this was also by a former Grand Wizard even retweeted this post as well. David Allen Duke, I think it was, saying that this is reason enough to say that the lefties are going to start rioting in the streets. And also, in case for those who don't know, a Grand Wizard is a leader of the Ku Klux Klan. So, make of that what you will. 10th of November, 4:07 a.m. Chris tweets the Infowars article. 4:23 a.m. Chris tweets that he wants his audience to join him in wishing death to the then President-elect Trump before January 2017. 6:53 p.m. Chris again tweets to pray for Trump's death. He also prays for then Vice President Mike Pence's death. He then links to a petition from Credo Action concerning the anti-LGBTQ Russell Amendment. November 13th, 2:06 a.m. Chris uploads a YouTube video in which he uses Legos to roleplay Mike Pence murdering Trump and getting arrested. He then holds up a sheet of paper with the handwritten words backwards and facing him. Before January 2017, Die Trump Die, or by illness by Mike Pence's hand. 2:36 a.m. Chris posts on Facebook about being annoyed by leftover Trump-Pence campaign signs. It is unknown whether or not Chris will take down the signs himself. 5:06 a.m. Chris posts on Facebook, linking to the Infowars article. He then tries to justify his behavior by saying, "I'm not the only one who wants him dead." But Chris, you made this very loud and clear on, social media, so of course people are going to see it. 9:17 p.m. Chris posts to the Lizzie the Leslie comment section asking the readers to pray for Trump and Pence's deaths before Thanksgiving. Many people respond, trying to talk sense into him, to no avail. November 14th, 12:53 p.m. Chris posts a picture to Facebook depicting Lego versions of Trump and Pence being executed by hanging while handcuffed. The text on the photo reads, "Die Trump die, die Pence die. We do not want either of you in office. Jail for you both is unlikely. We, the LGBTQ community, do not want to lose our protection and rights." 1:16 p.m. Chris follows up by commenting that, since prison is unlikely and impeachment is difficult, then death upon those two before January 2017. At this time, the point is a necessary evil. 3:07 p.m. Chris posts saying Trump is not president, mayor, or anything in Quickville. 7:30 p.m. The execution by hanging post and the associated comments disappear from Facebook. November 15th, 10:44 p.m. Chris announces Facebook had temporarily banned him for posting for a week. I wonder why, Chris. I have absolutely not the foggiest idea. November 20th, 5 a.m. Chris, in a 22-tweet long rant, makes several childish insults and says he had given his issues and feelings of Trump some thought. He claims that they are justified. He ends his rant by complaining about Twitter's 140-character limit. December 2nd, 5:51 p.m. Chris uploads Alpha Trion Young Warrior Challenge Explained. He roleplays Trump, Pence, and Clinton using Legos. So advocate the office Trump, advocate the position, and then maybe I'll take you down off of that noose. December 29th, 1:11 a.m. Chris returns to posting death threats against Donald Trump on Facebook in response to an article on Trump and the First Amendment Defense Act. Chris commented, "Advocate the office Trump or die Trump die." 1:43 a.m. Chris posts a puzzler for Trump. He asks Trump to consider a scenario wherein there is an alternate reality where everyone is gender flipped and an anti-straight law is proposed. He asked if Trump would support a law that is against the Donald Trump-et of that world. He ends by threatening Trump again. Hashtag Donald Trump, advocate the office and let Hillary Clinton run this country. For the love of religion and for any shred of self-love you have for yourself, or die from yours or someone else's hands. Chris later proofread both posts, editing advocate to abdicate. However, he did not tone down the death threats. January 4th, 2017, 8:34 a.m. Chris tweets the link for his puzzler to Trump's Twitter account, with the death threats still intact. 6:03 p.m. For the second time, Chris tweets his puzzler to Trump. January 20th, 10:54 p.m. Chris reacts to news on the inauguration of President Trump on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. He insists that the USA has no president or vice president, taking the hashtag #NotMyPresident hashtag a step further by stating that he will see an empty chair with no audible speech whatsoever. To cap it off, he says his mind will not be changed until either Trump and Pence leave voluntarily or they are both deceased. Chris on his death threats. Chris has attempted to rationalize his constant calls. Chris has attempted to rationalize his constant calls for Trump and Pence's deaths, and to reconcile his violent attitude with him being bothered that he has to resort to death wishing on anyone. After Chris suggested to the readers of Lizzie the Leslie, a LGBTQ Facebook page, to wish death on Trump and Pence, they instead criticized him for saying such stupid things. One person said, wishing death on people you don't like doesn't exactly make you look like a better person in comparison. Chris replied by saying that, with Trump and Pence in office, it would then be difficult to impeach them and get Hillary in. Not really, answering the question, but there you are. Chris has shifted on how he wants Trump to die. Upon learning of the election results, he wanted someone to kill Trump with a sniper rifle. The next day, he asked God to do it. Days later, he wanted Mike Pence to murder him. He also believed it was possible that Trump would die from old age before Inauguration Day, and that Clinton would not, since men die earlier than women. Inexplicably, Chris also wants science to kill Trump. Chris has considered the notion of Trump and Pence going to prison, but has concluded that prison is unlikely for them. How difficult impeachment is. What other option is there? He believes Trump should be jailed for all of his sexual assaults and rape on women. He would prefer Trump and Pence to simply hand over their democratically elected positions, saying to give the role of president with the most civil grace to Hillary Clinton. And since that is most bloody unlikely of Trump ever, I am still most pained to continue having to pray for Trump and Pence's deaths to happen before January 2017, by someone else's hands or illness. Chris further demonstrated his lack of political understanding in a post on the 4th of December, in which he said that Trump should advocate the position and take Pence with him, and let Hillary be president, as it should very well be. Chris likely has the word advocate confused with abdicate, which is a term he might have heard in British TV shows. It's a term typically used in reference to a monarchy. Due to his stubbornness, Chris has refused to budge from his anti-Trump positions, even after Lizzie the Leslie's readers and his Facebook friends criticised him for his repeated death threats. On the 20th of November, he stated, "I have given my issues and feelings of Trump some thought. They are justified," followed by saying, "As much as I would like to choose to be red-necked and stubborn enough to plead complete ignorance and utter denial of him and Pence, not only on the verge of taking office, there is still too many damn visuals about the bastards that plain further frustrate and upset me." Unfortunately for Chris, he simply forms his opinions via skimming clickbait articles whose authors are inclined to disagree with Trump. Due to his untreated autism, he hasn't attempted to do any research of his own on what Trump and Pence have actually said. Instead, he opts to live on in willful ignorance, putting no effort into enriching himself with knowledge and getting fanatically emotionally distraught about matters he barely understands. It's to the point that he believed death upon Trump and Pence before January 2017 at this time and point was a necessary evil. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the entire Trump article as part of one of the many things that causes Chris stress. I like to imagine it's another form of Chris's, idiotic and dangerous side to his violence, is that his hatred to Trump. I'd imagine that his hatred towards Trump is actually no better, in fact, even slightly worse than his hatred of homosexual men. Because when you think about it, his hatred towards homosexual men he means that in a very broad sense, as in somehow any man who happens to be gay is immediately demonized. This is despite the fact that Chris doesn't know anything about them, with the exception of a few people. Apparently he doesn't hate Stephen Fry just because he narrates Little Big Planet. I know that thought disgustes me as well, but what really, really, I think tips the scales in this case is that, and I don't really want to use that term anyway, because it's not fair for, gay people to be demonized by the likes of Chris, for Chris to, in his comics, to come up with a cure for homosexuality, just because there would be less risk of gay people going to hell. His words, not mine. But that Chris violently prays for Trump to be murdered and to die. His disdain for somebody he has never met in person, for somebody he actually knows very, very little about. Just all that matters to Chris is that he gets his own way. And I'll bring it back to you what it said at the bottom here. Frustrate and upset me. That's always been the problem when it comes down to Chris and his untreated autism. It's always about him. It's not about other people. Listen, I'm not American, so, my influence about, for the things I vote, for the things I say about, so regarding US politics, are extremely finite and extremely limited anyway, from only just based on what I actually do know about American politics. But then again, listen, guys, I'm from the UK. I know more about British politics. I know about the stuff that goes on in this country. And I certainly will say this, is that anyone, I think, who openly makes death threats on social media, I think there should be far more activity in getting those sort of people arrested, because distributing death threats, not just to politicians, not just just to everyone else, is that if you make death threats on social media to anyone, that's it. You should be, in my opinion, sent to prison, because forget the fact, things about free speech and all that. You're actually suggesting that someone should die for whatever reason. Particularly in the case of Chris, it's just because Trump exists and he is apparently not Hillary Clinton. Now, with that being said, I don't particularly disagree that there are a lot of people, part of the LGBT community, or straight or otherwise, who were not particularly very happy with Trump anyway. But the fact remains is that more often than more people than not must have been at least kind of happy because Trump won the election. Whether you want to say this is because Trump had a pretty weak opponent in the eyes of Hillary Clinton or not, I'll leave that for you to decide, and for something that historians will probably discuss 40 years into the future. Speaking of 40 years into the future, where I don't believe Chris will reach the age of 79, it'll be very, very interesting to see exactly how well Chris's opinions do hold up. If they won't hold up good before, they certainly will not be in many years. There'll probably be a president who will come along who will put forward this idea of a social studies class where they discuss exactly what you do not do on the internet, what you don't say, and how you should not act and respond to things. And Chris will probably be the figurehead of such a class like that. And don't say it isn't impossible either, because I've heard of some much weirder things being taught in schools, so why not? Makes about as much sense as anything else. So guys, I hope all of you guys have enjoyed this article on Pmurt by Chris, or by this Chris Chan article on Pmurt, and I will hope to see all of you guys again in the next video. Take care, bye bye for now.